What's up, everybody, and welcome to a Wednesday edition of Morning Cup of Hockey presented by Bet365. That's Colby Cohen. I'm Johnny Lazarus. This is actually our last show of the week, so we'll try to make it a good one for you guys. We got two guests. We got Kevin Kurz, friend of the show, our Philadelphia Flyers correspondent. Essentially, every time there is something going on in Philly, we always go right to Kevin. And we got first-time guest coming on today, Matt Moulson, former New York Islander, Sabre, with some quick stints in Minnesota and LA. We'll hear some stories from him. Excited to have him on. We'll probably get into some stuff last night, but not necessarily across the league. Try to keep it to within a few teams. Leading off with Philly this morning when Kevin does come on. But Colby, how you feeling this morning? You guys had a game last night. How'd that go?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. I don't want to talk about the game. How was that either? So we're good.
Yeah. Before we get into the Flyers, and there were obviously some interesting things coming out of, some interesting comments that I want to address with Kevin. I do want to start by saying the Blues are hot, man. Yeah. I mean, you watch that game, those guys, of the 6 goals, give a freeze frame on 4 or 5 of the goals where you've got 4 blue sweaters right on top of the crease. I mean, those guys are hungry. Like, they are playing Jim Montgomery north hockey, where you just flood the net. You make the goaltender uncomfortable. And look, Calgary is hanging around. They've got games in hand, but you got to like what you're seeing if you're a Blues fan. So why don't you read Kevin in here and go ahead.
Well, I was gonna add one thing to your Blues comment. Since March 1st, the NHL's leading point scorers: Jack Eichel with 20, Sidney Crosby with 18, William Nylander with 18, Dylan Holloway, 17 points in the Blues' last 13 games, 6 goals, 11 assists. And if you're an Oilers fan, we'd love to hear what Tyler thinks about that. He's got to be kicking himself. But I think people are saying, like, maybe that'll encourage teams to, send offer sheets this summer with how successful Holloway's been in St. Louis. I just wanted to add that little piece, but I will read Kevin in because we don't want to waste any of his time. So before we bring Kevin Kurz on, I just want to give a quick word from our sponsor, Perasso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care, made in Italy since 1948. Perasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Perasso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps. Hockey15. And Kevin, I know you're still in Toronto. How you feeling this morning after that game last night? That was probably a rough one to sit through.
Yeah, it's getting ugly around here. And the game in Chicago wasn't any better, giving up 7 goals to a bad team on Sunday and to obviously a much better team on Tuesday. It's pretty brutal here right now, to be honest. They're sort of off the rails at the moment.
Yeah, well, I will say this before we get into the comments from last night. As painful as it is, I think, for people right now, I'm happy in a way for Flyers fans because you're going to get hopefully another top, maybe even 2 or 3 pick. Who knows? Like, if you end up in that, you can move up 5 spots, right? So obviously the odds aren't in your favor, but you could end up with the first overall pick. And let me tell you, like, I think 1, 2, 3, 4 even this year, while they don't have the Celebrini ceiling, they're all, like, there's options there. And it's not a foregone conclusion that Schaefer's going to go number 1 or Higgins is going to go number 1 or Misa's going to go number 1. Like, I think it's going to come down to beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I do think the Flyers are going to get a stud at the top of this draft. Like, I think there's a good chance you get another top flight player that you can add to what you hope Michkov turns into. And you got another really elite level player, whether it's a forward or a defenseman with Schaefer.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, I don't think the front office is necessarily shedding any tears right now, because the way Danny Briere has talked about this rebuild, and he mentioned it again at the trade deadline, they're looking at the draft classes of 23, 24, and 25 as the bulk of what their prospect group is going to be moving forward. And he left out 2026 because they do plan on trying to turn the corner a little bit this summer. There's very, very little doubt in my mind they're going to try to add this summer, and they're going to try to get better. going into next season. There's a lot of work to do, as we can all see right now. But I'm pretty convinced at this point that this is what the plan is. This is the bottom. The plan is to bottom out this year. Well, maybe the plan wasn't to bottom out this year, but they are bottoming out this year. They want to start getting better next year.
Well, that was what I was going to ask too, because I think if we've learned anything from any sports city over the past decade, I don't know how patient and how much Philadelphia fans trust the process. So I don't know if the complete teardown is the way to go here.
Ouch.
In
shot at the Sixers too. The Sixers are catching strays.
That was the shot. Yeah, the Sixers that they started this whole thing.
I know.
The Sixers are the team that started the whole trust the process. You know what I mean? And they haven't done shit.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from my perspective, and I obviously I grew up here, as Colby knows, as you guys both know, and then I left town for 12 years doing this media job and came back, and I don't think I really quite understood the frustration level of the fans at this point because of how grim it has been. Under Ron Hextall, under Chuck Fletcher, there were obviously a lot of mistakes made. But I'm not looking at them. I'm looking at when Danny Briere and Keith Jones came in, that was a reset point, right? And so I think you have to look at this as we're not even in 2 full years into the Danny Briere, Keith Jones era. So the whole process so far has been tearing down, has been removing pieces. This is what they plan to do all along, just because they've got all this dead money on the salary cap through next season too.
Yeah.
This was the plan, and they didn't expect Matvei Michkov here for another 2 years. So, the timeline all along was not even to be competitive next season, but the season after that, the 2026-27 season. So in some ways, I know it sounds a little odd to say, but in some ways they are ahead of schedule. You wouldn't know that by looking at the team right now. And make no mistake, there are some guys on this team right now that should be playing a lot better. Some young players, I think, that there should be concern over, whether that's Cam York, whether that's Owen Tippett. But they have gotten a lot of the money off the books. The Joel Farabee trade took some money off. You've got Michkov here early. You've got Konechny locked up now. You've got guys like Tyson Forster and Noah Cates, who I think they want to keep around. So, obviously it's not going to be a Stanley Cup team next season, but I do expect, and again, I know it sounds strange to say right now, I do expect that they're going to make some moves next summer. And when training camp rolls around, they're going to say, you know what, we want to make a run at the playoffs this year.
Right. And yeah, listen, we'll see what happens. I think one of the hidden things that Danny's done is get rid of some long-term contracts that he didn't like, whether it was Farabee's, whether it was Kevin Hayes's. Like he had to make some of these decisions, and they take time. So, okay, well, I think the thing that caught everybody by surprise last night was towards his comments. And I'll say this, like, I read your tweet and I was like, oh my God. And at first I was like, oh my God, he can never coach another game after reading the tweet. And then I listened to the audio, and like, I have a question for you, like, because I know you're in the scrum, and I'm curious, like, are you, as he's talking, writing this, or do you record this and then sit down? Like, what's the process for that for a journalist?
Yeah, I'm just recording it. And obviously I'm trying to, I have a list of things that I usually write down as to, so I don't forget to ask them or to make sure if somebody else will usually ask them the same sorts of things. Like, for example, why didn't Cam York play for the last 50 minutes of the game? That's right. Something you don't want to forget to ask. And I'm sure, I didn't ask it, but I figured somebody else would. The quote, when you read it on Twitter like that, this is why Twitter drives me crazy sometimes, is I can understand why people would read that as him saying, you know what, I'm not interested in this. I quit.
Yeah,
this is terrible.
Exactly.
And that's not at all what
right.
he was saying. He's still working. He's still trying to coach this team. I talk to this guy every day. He's still working. He still is as committed to this as he has been. Has already said he wants to be the coach here next season. So there's no doubt in my mind that it wasn't any sort of I give up on this season. This is terrible. This team stinks. It was more, I think, just an extension of him trying to take some ownership of the losing streak.
Mm-hmm.
And interested was probably the wrong word to use. You know, he's frustrated where they're at because he didn't. You know, if you go back to last season, the Flyers did hang in the playoffs, right? And they choked it away in March.
Yeah. After
Game
the
82,
Couturier scratching.
yeah, it was, and he made mistakes. I think he pushed too hard last year, and maybe that's part of why he's saying some of the things he's saying now. But you know, that team played meaningful games up into game 82. They had a chance to make the playoffs on the last game of the season, and obviously they didn't make it. And now it's been over for some time, right? You know, when you lose all those games coming out of the trade deadline and some of the pieces that were gone. I mean, everyone could see that this team wasn't going to make a playoff run. And you know, and they actually looked like they might if you go right before the trade deadline. They come off a win in Winnipeg, I think on was it March 1st or something like that, March 4th. And it looked like, you know what, this team actually is playing pretty well. They're playing hard. The goaltending was holding up before it completely fell off, partially because of the Scott Lawton trade, I think. But anyway, getting back to the quote, yeah, we'll ask Torts to qualify to clarify that tomorrow morning at the morning skate. But you know, he's not saying I don't want to coach this team. This isn't where I want to be. It was none of that. I think he was just trying to take ownership of the losing streak. And as he said earlier in the presser, you know, it falls on me to get them more prepared.
Yeah. Well, and the audio, like we have the audio because I think NBC Philly posted it. If they're still called they're still called NBC Philly. Yeah. Everybody's like changing their names. I'm like, wait, I just got to make sure it's that right. And I think even in the audio, like we were laughing about this last night, like, and we were talking about it in our group chat. It's like sometimes when you send a text message and you can't read the tone in a text message, and you're just like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, and that's where I think people should. We have the audio.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
You need to hear the audio because I'll fully side with Kevin here. Like, this is not a guy who's throwing in the towel, and the audio, you get that from the audio. He's just, you're right. He's eating it himself, and he's blaming himself. Like I look, when your team isn't ready to play like that and they fully no-show, like there's something in the preparation that you have to earn, you have to eat as a coach. Like, and so it was a good reminder to make sure that when you read things, you like try to find the audio on them. You know what I mean? Like it is super helpful to get that audio, Johnny.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I still think, it's so hard to like actually say, because I know like a part of it is, you know, when I'm in the press conference room talking to Pierre Laviolette, everyone's quick to get the good quote out, right? Like if someone says something interesting, you want to get it out. You do want people to react to it. You do, you know, right? At least that's, you know, my opinion on it. But obviously when you do see the audio and you get a chance to clarify and give people a little bit more insight into what's going on, like I'm sure, you know, people see that and it could go one of either way. It's not automatically going to go the way that it did go last night. Right. But sometimes these things pick up, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like, you know, Frank retweets it and other people retweet it. And then it just goes with the narrative that like the first person to share it says, right? And people don't look into it. They see someone else say something about it and then they just jump on that opinion. If you get what I'm saying. That wasn't a very articulate way to say what I'm trying to say, but
well, he has to clarify it. Like he does have to clarify it tomorrow morning. There's no question, and I'm sure he will. You know, I'm sure he's aware of the fact that it kind of blew up a little bit. But I would encourage everyone, and not to pump my own work here, but I would encourage everyone to, if you look at the piece that I wrote, he was very, it was really interesting, some of the stuff he was saying at the morning skate. You know, and obviously any coach, when they get to Toronto, they know the deal. They know they're going to be surrounded by more cameras at the morning skate than they are at any other city in the country or in North America. And he was very detailed about how he's approaching this team and how he's trying to, you know, I think he used the phrase, it's not a time to kick them, right? Because he realizes that the roster is weaker, much weaker than it was even 2 months ago. You know, when you take 3 top 9 forwards out of a team that wasn't very talented to begin with, you're going to feel that a little bit when the goaltending is in the state that it's in. So you know, I think he realizes that, and I think he realizes some of the emotions that some of the guys are going through by, you know, Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, Scott Lawton. We're all, you know, it's
Loved
three
guys.
guys that everybody loved those guys, right? And there is a human element, and obviously you've got to get over that at some point. And you know, it's probably lingered a little bit too long than it should have, but there's no question that they were adversely affected by those deals, not just from an on-ice standpoint, but from an off-ice dressing room culture standpoint.
Yeah.
And Torch
Can I-
recognizes that, and Torch,
Yeah.
and that's why he's saying and doing some of the things he's doing, I would argue.
I want to add one thing quick too, though, because I'm seeing some comments in our chat now about comments from last night's game with the Rangers and stuff. And Kevin, I'm sure you see this like in your mentions all the time too. Isn't it like wild to you how fans get angry at what a player might say about the game? Like they can't just be angry at the game itself. Like if you don't basically come out and tell the media that you suck, the fans aren't happy. Like, what do you think the players are gonna say? They're not gonna say we suck. They're a better team than us. Like that's why I don't get the rage and the anger from post-game comments. And I don't even think post-game comments are necessary all the time. Like you watch the game, you know what happens. Why do you feel the need to have to talk about it? Like
no, I think they're necessary. I would disagree with you pretty big time there, Johnny. Like I think people pay.
But what do you think they're gonna say?
Well, but here's the thing. People pay an arm and a leg to be at those games. They pay an arm and a leg for cable, streaming, whatever. They deserve to hear from players that their fans are essentially paying the players. Like, I mean, the hockey related revenue. So I'm going to push back on you a little there, Johnny. I think people need to get in front of a microphone and talk after a sporting event that generated 30, 40, 50 million dollars in ticket revenue from people's hard-earned paychecks. So I'm going to push back on you a little there, Johnny.
Kevin, thoughts?
Well, I you know, a lot of times post-game quotes are certainly I think it's valuable in a lot of settings, right?
Yeah.
You know, you learn a lot about not all the time, right? Sometimes they're completely useless.
Yeah.
But other times, you know, other times, win or loss, they do provide a lot of insight into you know what's going on. So, you know, I hate, as someone who's a writer, I hate that everything is, you know, in front of a camera and gets posted online, because the most insightful quotes you get from athletes these days are very rarely in front of a camera. They're in side conversations off with a reporter that they trust and they know isn't going to burn them, or they're even conversations on background where you're not actually explicitly quoting a guy. So, you know, a lot of times, fans will turn on the post-game show and they'll see the cookie cutter quotes from players, and sometimes they are completely useless. But you know, I still think it's valuable, and particularly with a guy like John Tortorella. I mean, he's people see him, you know, people see the moments go viral and whatnot, but you know, especially the days between games where he's sitting at the podium at the skate zone in Voorhees at the practice rink. I mean, he'll sit up there for 10, 11, 12 minutes, and he's the most insightful coach I've ever covered. I think I'm on, you know, 5 or 6 of them at this point.
Yeah, that's
I just want to clarify. I'm not saying to like get rid of post-game comments. I'm just saying for the people that get angry about what a player might say is, to me, I see it every game. So I'm like, And one of them I was getting all year was like, ask Ryan Lindgren why he sucks. Like, that's not like, no.
But I think you know, look, you're going to get stock answers a lot of the time. And I think a lot of times in sports, in an 82 game season, like you do have to lie to yourself at times as an athlete and be like, we were this close, or a couple more bounces. Like you have to you have to trick yourself in a situation like that. And you have to keep, and a lot of the things that players give, those stupid, meaningless, we got to, you know, chip pucks a little bit more. Like, a lot of times that's the same conversation that they are actually having on the bench. Like hockey is just it's such a different sport. So Kev, we're grateful that you were willing to, on your probably travel day, to jump on with us. The last question I just want to ask you before we say goodbye to you is, do you expect to see John Tortorella as the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers next year? I mean, you know, you've covered him really well. I will second what you said about your work. I make no like secrets on my show how I feel about a lot of people in this profession writing, but I always am first to point people to your work because I feel like you're one of the honest guys. And I know you're at practice every day. Like you put in the work in an old school manner that I don't think a lot of people are doing anymore.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
We may not always agree, but I will always respect. But so I'm curious, as somebody who's been with this team now and has been living this rebuild, and I know you have good trust built up with people who make decisions in Philadelphia. What is your best guess on what will happen with John Tortorella?
I mean, if I had to guess right now, I do still think he's going to be the coach next year, but I don't think you can go into a situation where it's a lame duck year. I think you've either got to extend him a year or maybe move him to the front office. But certainly I don't think there's any guarantees. I think when they originally looked at this, like I said before, they looked at this as maybe a little bit of a longer rebuild than it might end up being, just because, a guy like Mitchkov is here early, like that sort of thing. So I do wonder. I think it's, it might depend on how aggressive they get in the offseason or how aggressive they want to get in the offseason. Is Danny finally going to make a big trade for what he thinks is going to be a centerpiece top line center? Does he go out and find another goalie? Do they start making some moves with some other younger players? So, the one thing I do know is that John Tortorella still has a lot of influence with the front office. Just when you look at the players they moved out, you start with Kevin Hayes, Ivan Provorov weren't seen as culture guys. Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee weren't seen as fits for the long term on the ice. These were all people that John Tortorella you could tell there was a disconnect with those guys in those ways. So, it's hard to say right now. I want to see how the season finishes out, right?
Fair. That's fair.
But people reading that tweet last night and saying, "Oh, he's got to go. There's no way he's the coach next year." I'm certainly not going that far. And also might depend on who's available. If Rick Tocchet ends up being a guy that's available, he's really close with Keith Jones.
Yeah.
Is that a situation that the front office looks at and says, you know what, maybe it's time to get in a guy like that? So we'll see. It's so hard to predict any coaching situations in this business, as you guys know. But I think one way or another, I will say this: I do think John Tortorella will be in the organization next season.
I would agree with that.
Whether that's behind the bench or in a different role.
He'll still be getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, and it won't be for him to be living in Florida in a retirement manner.
No.
Wait, I want to just address Flyers Purgatory in the chat, who said Torts is a clown. He refused to talk about benching his 20-minute a night defenseman.
Yeah.
The only thing I will say about that, and okay, like, you can be frustrated he didn't want to talk about that. First off, I think a player 100% is appreciative that he doesn't publicly talk about that, because I'm sure he'll address it privately. Second, if Cam York is a 20-minute a night defenseman for you, and this is no disrespect to Cam, I have followed him since his days at Michigan, your team is not a winning and like a true contending hockey team. So Cam York is not a top pair defenseman, and 20 minutes, maybe that's a second pair defenseman. It sort of depends on what team it is. Like, to me, again, he's not a guy. If you're going to be a team that can win a Stanley Cup, he's not a 20-minute night defenseman in my opinion. So I just wanted to address that. As a player, your appreciation level for your coach for not saying and throwing you under the bus publicly and doing it privately. Again, I don't know I'm not sure I know their relationship or whatever, but I would just say that I think a player would appreciate that. And then the other thing I want to say to you, Kevin, you need to make sure you are directing Flyers fans to watch Alex Bump, because I truly believe, because I'm now pretty deep into my film study as I lead into the NCAA tournament, and I've now watched a decent amount of Western Michigan down the stretch. I would say Ryan Leonard is the most NHL ready player in the NCAA. I think after that, I think Zeev Buium has a much higher ceiling, no doubt, but I think the defense position is much harder. I think Alex Bump and Zeev Buium are similarly ready for the National Hockey League. I'm not saying I think they're the same caliber player, because I think Zeev Buium has a superstar's potential. And I'm not saying that about I'm not saying that about Alex Bump. But when you watch the way Bump plays and you watch the way this kid scores his goals and his details and his habits, he looks like a guy who smells NHL ready to me, playing for a coach in Pat Ferschweiler who has an NHL background. So he's pushing him that way. So I hope you're pumping this guy up to your fan base.
Yeah, actually, I had a conversation with someone in the Flyers organization not too long ago, and they love this kid. There's no question about that. The excitement for him is genuine, at least coming from this person that I talked to. And it was pointed out to me too that, he was taken in the 5th round of the draft in 2022. And apparently he was pissed off about that. He thought he should have gone much higher.
Good for him.
I know. I've covered players in the past, Colby. I'm sure you would attest to this too. There's some guys that Dan Boyle was like this. He went undrafted and he carried that chip on his shoulder until he was in his well into his 30s. Yeah. So if that's giving Alex Bump some extra motivation to prove people wrong, that's certainly never a bad thing. And maybe that's part of his development process. But I do expect. I would guess that they're going to try to get him in, depending on how long the season goes. I don't know. So does he play tonight, right? Is it single elimination?
Thursday, I believe, right?
Okay.
I have the bracket up here, actually.
If they get knocked out, I would expect the Flyers to try to bring him in here.
Yeah, they should. Get him.
They won't play NHL games, but they'll certainly want to get him a part of the AHL.
See,
Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
I wouldn't be shocked if he does play NHL games.
Well, they've used their 4 call-ups already, so I don't think technically they could. But
because he's on that protected list and he's not signed, I do think that there's other rules that apply to those guys, because you're technically not signing him. You're technically not calling a guy up. As long as they have room within their 50 contracts, which I think that they do, I think this year he could sign, play, and burn this year. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do think that's an option.
Well, I do think they like him, and I do think they want to get him here as soon as possible.
Check him out on Thursday. Watch his game. I think Western could win. I seriously think they could win a championship this year. I think they're that good.
I just had one last question, Kevin, and it's short and sweet. Will the Flyers score a power play goal before the season ends?
Oh, my God. Well, that's another thing. I mean, the ship has already sailed in terms of when you talk about coaching changes. There's no question they need a new voice running this power play. It was last in the league 2 years ago, last in the league last year. I think it's 30th right now.
For their last 32, I believe. They haven't scored.
Yeah, for 32. Yeah, haven't scored a power play goal in March. Yeah. So, Rocky Thompson, I think they appreciate his effort, but it's about results. Results haven't come. I mean, there'll be a fan mutiny if they don't find someone new to run this power play.
Yeah.
All right, well, man. Listen, we appreciate it. Yeah, I know I asked you for 10 minutes and it turned into 30, but we appreciate your insights.
All right, I got time. Yeah, I got time to get to the airport.
We don't talk about the Flyers very often on here, but when we do, you're usually the guy doing it, so we appreciate you.
Yep, always enjoy joining you guys. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Any quick thoughts, Colby, before we move on to our next guest here?
No. Listen, insightful. I thought that was insightful.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's just bring him in. First-time guest, maybe new friend. I'll call him already. Former Islander, former Sabre, quick stint in Minnesota and LA. Matt Moulson. Matt, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm having a little problem with my AirPods, so hopefully you can hear me here.
Yeah, you sound great.
Problem.
Sound great. Yeah, no problem at all. And I know you're in Greenwich. Never turned the page from the Islanders, right?
No, still bleed in blue and orange.
We love that. Well, I don't personally.
Well, wait, can we start by telling him?
I was gonna tell him. You tell him.
So, Johnny gets really excited. He gets really excited at times, and he loves to go out on a limb. Last year, his big limb was that Alexis Lafreniere would get 100 points.
Not last season. At some point in his career,
that didn't turn out so well. This year, he came out one day on. I think it was on our show, or was it on our?
It was on DFO Live.
It was on DFO Live, and he said, "If I am so confident that the New York Islanders won't make the playoffs, that if they do, I will get an Islanders lower back tattoo." he referred to it, and I quote, as a tramp stamp, and I
I don't know if
quote.
that's acceptable anymore.
So that's how confident he was that the Islanders wouldn't make the playoffs. Now, the minute he did it, Matt, everything changed, and the Islanders started winning hockey games. So the Johnny Jinx is on.
Yeah, it looked that way. Trading away Brock, and all of a sudden things start to click for him.
Yeah, no, they've been. I don't know. Whatever it is this time of year, they always figure it out somehow. No matter who's on that roster in March, the Islanders always go on a streak. So, it's fun to follow. I'm not going to say it's fun to watch because now I just get scared every time. But no, it's been great stuff. And listen, there's so many different places to start with you, but I wanted to ask this too because we've talked about Brad Marchand here, the past couple of weeks about him being traded to Florida and like the conversation about him possibly returning to Boston in the summer. You're one of those people who was traded midseason that actually ended up signing with the team that you were traded to. There aren't many, and you were traded away from also. Like there aren't many of you. So just to give people a little bit of a refresher, you were traded from the Islanders to the Sabres and then traded again, right, to Minnesota in the same season.
Yeah.
And then you ended up signing with Buffalo that summer, right?
Yes.
So can you take us through like the conversation or the process that you might have had with Buffalo to then re-signing with them after being traded away from them in that same season?
Well, I will say I came a long way because when I first got traded from the Islanders to the Sabres, myself and my wife were crying. So it was a tough,
which is fair.
That was more about the Islanders. Yeah, that was more about the Islanders, right?
It was a tough night. But I loved my time with Buffalo when I was there during the year. Obviously Teddy Nolan had come in, and I loved Teddy Nolan. And I think it might have been a couple of weeks before the trade deadline when Patty LaFontaine was still there. We sat down at breakfast, and he kind of was picking my brain. He's like, "If we trade you away, would you be interested in re-signing?" And I said, absolutely. I said, if you could trade me away, get some assets, and then me re-sign, I go, it's kind of win-win. Get to try and play in the playoffs and then re-sign after the season. So I think there was definitely no animosity there. I loved I loved playing there. I loved the area. I loved the people and the guys on the team. So it was a little bit of a different situation. I think there was no gripe about not being signed before the trade deadline. I was comfortable with that, and obviously they knew that it wasn't a for sure thing. I had the opportunity to sign anywhere else as well. So I think it was a little bit of blind trust between us, but I was very thankful it worked out the way it did.
How was Ron Ralston as a head NHL coach? I know you probably didn't spend that much time with him, but I got to think the gardening gloves, coming out for practice with the gardening gloves the first day probably would have thrown the boys off. I know when I had him at the national team, and the first day when he came out in those things, we were looking at each other like, what did we get ourselves into? Like, who is this guy?
Yeah, I was definitely caught off guard. Obviously, I played with his brother, Brian, on the island. Ron, he's an awesome guy. He was, kind of thrust into a tough situation where they're extremely young, a lot of inexperience, and he kind of had to deal with them trying to I wouldn't use the word tank, but hopeful to get Eichel or McDavid in that draft. Mm-hmm. So he had a real tough situation, but he's he was a great guy, good coach, and just one of those things where it was tough for us to get wins during that time.
That is such an interesting thing, though. That I'm happy you brought up like the Eichel McDavid thing because you got to see John Tavares enter the Islanders as a first overall pick. You got to see Jack Eichel enter Buffalo, as a second overall pick, and being teammates with those two guys. I know they're completely different people,
mm-hmm.
personality wise, it seems like. But I'm so curious why. Yeah, I mean, I'm so curious to hear about maybe some like similarities and differences that you might have noticed. And obviously you're a little bit older when Eichel comes in, but anything you could see that you could differentiate between those two guys in their entry to the NHL.
Yeah, I think obviously both of them have become some of my best friends, and in life, I think I had a chance to live with Johnny his first year, and I'd actually known him since he was young. He played with my brother. They played lacrosse together. We worked out together in the summers. And I think he, two completely different types of players, I would say, but they both have this drive to just want to be the best. I think, there's no really in between. I think Johnny, maybe he was a little more dialed in to everything in terms of training and how he ate and all that stuff when he first came in. I had to kind of tell him to have a little fun to take the stress off.
Yeah. Have some more bacon, egg, and cheeses, pal. It'll do you fine.
I think he'd give me a crooked look if I had a glass of wine the night before a game. But he always had that drive to be the best, and it never stopped. It didn't. It wasn't like he reached a certain point and then was satisfied with his game. And I think you see what he's doing now. Obviously, Father Time gets the best of all of us and slows us down a bit, but he's finding other ways to be successful. And he's got 32 goals now again.
Unreal. The consistency. We were debating before the show started. Johnny was like, do you think he's a Hall of Famer? I'm like, look how many points this guy's had for how many years in a row. Like, the model of consistency in the National Hockey League. He's a top 5 scorer since what year, Johnny? 2000.
I wanted to read this list out. Since 2009, 2010, the top 5 NHL scorers are Sidney Crosby, Patrick Kane, Alexander Ovechkin, Steven Stamkos, John Tavares.
It's not pretty bad. Nuts. And he had to play with me for 5 years, so there you go. He probably would have had
330 goal seasons in a row, though. Like, hey, that is sneaky. I don't think that gets talked about enough. Like how good you were, especially around the net. Like I'm sure these goalie interference calls drive you fucking nuts as a guy who is playing around the net front as long as you did.
The Islander one the other day with
Palmieri, I know
that one kind of got me because Palmieri's not even in the crease and he moves out as the puck's coming, just a perfect kind of moving out from the net screen. I used to love those ones, and that was tough. That was a tough call. I think you're always taught the blue paint's for the goalie. If you're touching the goalie outside the blue paint, I believe it shouldn't matter. If he comes outside the blue and you even give him a little bump by accident, it should still be a goal. But they're tough to watch. I probably would have had a couple goals called back if I was playing in today's day and age.
Well, this one, I wanted to show you, and I say this as a Ranger fan. My first Islander playoff game. I grew up in Syosset, Long Island. So, I went to the Coliseum all the time as a kid. I was at Game 3, 2013 against the Penguins. You scored that goal about like a minute and a half in. I have never been in a louder building in my life than when this goal went in, because I think it was the Islanders' first home playoff game probably since like 2007, maybe.
Yeah.
So it had been like 6 years. And this puck went in. I'm telling you, the roof was going to blow off. Is this one of those moments you look back on and like, it's got to be a top 5 memory for you in your career?
100%. I think coming out for warm up in that game, we had Drake playing, started from the bottom. We kind of changed our song when we made the playoffs and played that, and the place was electric, like the loudest. I had the opportunity to play in Chicago for a playoff game, and that was unbelievable. But the Coliseum, how the noise was trapped in the building and coming out in that, and then scoring a classic Matt Molson jam it in goal. My ears were ringing. I remember going back to the bench and trying to just settle myself down, because my adrenaline was like through the roof, and I was like, you gotta take a breath here. But it was an unbelievable moment, and playing those games in the Coliseum for the playoffs and the tailgating beforehand was just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, those were look, maybe the UBS Arena will get an opportunity to get loud this year. I have never followed the New York Islanders so closely. I am looking at every little thing that they do, because my partner here having to get a back tattoo live on our show. I think that has the chance of being
Is it going to be color? Is there gonna be a colored tattoo? Blue, and you got to go
Oh,
blue.
yeah.
I think it's the fisherman logo is
Yeah.
what we
I
decided on.
mean, if
Yeah.
that's not a reason for everybody to rally around the Islanders, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
You get a little creative with that too if you're going with the fisherman, little throwing his lines.
What do you want to come?
They had like a
Um,
part designing that one.
Matt, I know we kind of talked about this already. Like we talked about Tavares. You know, look, I'm riding the Jack Eichel train, man. I think that guy, the player that he's become, and the way he's become so dominant in defensively on top of his offensive game. You saw him when he was just kind of a young hot shot coming out of college. You know, I'm sure, again, I know Jack from when he was 20 years old to Jack now. Like everybody generally, most guys grow up a little bit. Are you surprised at how good he's become in all three zones? Like, I don't think the offensive thing anybody's surprised about, but I'll be honest. Like, I didn't realize that he could be the best defensive player on the ice every night and the best offensive player on the night every night.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that because I've been I've been kind of saying for the last couple months that he's the best 200-foot player in the game right now.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think you know, Jack, you just reminded me of a quote that Dean Lombardi gave me when I was playing in Manchester. Teddy Purcell and I were sitting in his office, and we didn't have a great game, and he called us a bunch of college hot shots with a couple of swear words in between. But no, I think Jack has become extremely in touch with his body. Obviously, he had the whole neck thing. I think he treats his body better, if not the same as the best people in the world that take care of their body. Just the way he treats it and the things he does every night after every game and every day, paying attention to that and trying to get longevity out of his body and making sure it's ready every day. So I think that's something he's become extremely aware of and done a great job with. I think you look at Cassidy taking over the coaching job in Vegas, and I don't remember anyone else holding Jack, I guess, accountable for that 200-foot game. And I remember early on in the season talking to Jack when Butch took over, and there was some struggles.
Yeah, I remember that.
But then you get there by the end of the year, he's absolutely dominant on both sides of the puck, and it's pretty impressive the points he's been putting up with that responsibility. I think. I mean, I was talking to one of my friends is a big numbers guy, and he's like, he's probably giving up like a 0.2 points per game, just being so responsible defensively. So he's transformed into just a dominant hockey player in all three zones. And I think you see that a nice hat trick last night, but he is if you're looking at guys that you want to build your team around, he's got to be right up there with the type of hockey he's playing right now.
We were in Hawaii after his first year with Bruce Cassidy, and we ran into each other in Hawaii, and we were talking about it, and there was he was not totally bought into Butch yet. Butch people call Bruce Cassidy Butch. And I know it. I had the guy for 4 years, Matt, and it's very difficult. Especially as a 21-year-old, very difficult guy to play for. By my fourth year is a little, I understood him a little bit more, but I that could have gone either way. But Jack, I think, was like, no, I'm going to rise to this challenge. And your opinion of him is an opinion that we share. And we've debated, if you're picking a team for the playoffs, is he the number one center on your team? If you can have any of them, obviously Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid or whatever, but we were kind of talking about how we put Jack right there. Like you're kind of flipping a coin almost, and they're all a little different, but I sure trust the way Jack Eichel plays on a nightly basis if I'm building a team to win a Stanley Cup as much as anybody at the
100%. I mean, that Conn Smythe could have gone as 50-50.
Yeah, should have been him.
I
thought it should have been him.
Yeah.
But it's a testament to Butch Cassidy as well. I think he had this star player who's obviously tremendous on the offensive side, and it wasn't like he was a slouch defensively. He was pretty darn good, but to really see that as a coach, like this is how we're going to win a Stanley Cup, and sticking by his guns, I think that's a testament to him as a coach as well. So obviously they doing some great things in Vegas every year, so it's no surprise.
Matt, I want to go back a little bit again because I always love hearing the fun stories. And as a Long Island kid, I'm sure there are plenty with your time in the Islanders. And Nate Thompson's a good friend of the show, and I know he was there a little bit before you. And he's told a story on here about how they got Chris Campoli fake arrested one time at a team party. And I actually know one of your former teammates is listening right now, and Rob Schremp, because I texted him and
My boy.
asked him for a story. He said he couldn't give me anything for air, but I know he's watching. And obviously those teams were pretty fun. You said you lived with Tavares, early in his days. Curious if you have any story that you can share on here. One that gets told when you guys catch up and see each other. That's a good laugh always.
With Shreppy or with JT?
With the Islanders, anything with the Islanders in general, like one that's talked about when you guys like get together and play golf or whatever,
Oh man, I mean, we had I think you look at teams and usually the successful teams have a good culture and a good group, and I mean, we didn't win the Stanley Cup, but we got the playoffs for the first time in a while, and we had just a tremendous group of guys on that team. We're all fairly young, trying to break into the league, and some good times. I will say Robbie Schremp was the MVP at my wedding. I think he had my dad's arms going up and down behind him on the dance floor, and we had a good time. I'm trying to think of it. Some good stories we had.
Where were you guys living when you were there? Because I know
Shrimpy was just before his time with everything. He's such an MVP at everything. He just was before his time. Otherwise
he was the Zegras before Zegras. If there was
exactly,
he was the OG. He was the godfather of being creative, and he just has a mind that's it's different than it works differently than a lot of people's, and he likes to push the boundaries and try new things. And I think if he started playing in the TikTok world, he probably have 10 million followers. So
I agree. We've said that before. Yep.
Yeah. He just I just got to introduce him to the gym one of these times, and he'd be all set.
Hey, that's not the Syracuse way. You learn how to shoot in Syracuse. You don't learn how to work out. I had a coach, years after him, and like he was the one who gave me the tryout. They put me on the ice with Rob, and Rob was basically like, "Okay, yeah, this guy checks out. He can play on the team." And that's all we learned how to do that year was score. No defense. No gym, score. Yeah. That's what Don Kernan taught us. So I understand the school of thought.
Well, I actually played against, it's funny, I don't even think Shrimpy remembers the story, but I played against Shrimpy in Toronto. They used to have this thing called the Prospects Tournament, and we didn't have the spring hockey and summer hockey so much.
I remember Prospects Tournament. Yeah. I did it in Toronto.
It was like the one tournament, the biggest tournament, all the so-and-so scouts would be there. But I remember playing Shrimpy. I mean, I was in 83. I think his brother's in 84. And Shrimpy was playing with his brother up against my team.
Yeah, Tyler.
And I remember Shrimpy. I'm like, who the heck is this kid? And I remember Shrimpy going up to a bunch of my teammates. He's like, I don't know if we were beating or losing them, but he was going up to a couple of the guys that are 4 years older than him and says, hey, buddy, give it up. I'll send you a postcard from the NHL, but you ain't making it.
In the great, did he have the great whites at that? Did he have the white skates at Prospects Tournament? What a legend! Like I know a couple guys. Like there were just guys that were just ahead of their time for whatever reason, and had they come at a different 10-year period to the NHL, they would have been celebrated as heroes instead of looked at as pariahs, unfortunately. But the skill that Shrimpy had was I mean, again. It was so ahead of his time. Like he was the OG. I totally agree with that.
Well, that's why I said it. I think it was kind of the, the old heads in hockey didn't really like what he was doing because he was different. My brother-in-law Brett, though, Shrempy was by far his favorite player. So
Yeah.
I remember I had to deal with Reebok. I had to get Brett the white Reeboks so he could look like Shrempy. He had the same stick. I used to bring Shrempy up to my in-laws for dinners, and my youngest brother-in-law would be in heaven asking Shrempy questions and stuff.
I mean, I told you yesterday, Matt, over text, like I grew up playing against your brother-in-law Brett, because he's a '96, I think, just like me.
Yeah.
Mid Fairfield Blue, that team was nasty, like when I was younger. But like I've told Colby this. I told Shrempy when he came on our show, like he was the YouTube guy that our generation was watching.
Yeah.
You know, like we watch, because now like kids can watch every single game, every single highlight. I could only watch MSG as a kid. We didn't get out of town, broadcast. Like it was either versus OLN or you're watching MSG. So like you go on YouTube and watch shrimp highlights, and that's like what we all wanted to do in practice the next day. So I totally get why Brett was, or he was Brett's favorite player at the time. Like that's what it was.
We grew up a little differently, because when I was trying to make it in the league, I was recording Andrew Burnett games and looking how to go down low and stay in front of the net. You guys were watching stick tricks. So
exactly. Yeah.
I'm not part of the YouTube generation. I'm 36, so I still don't understand the whole YouTube thing, but I'm certainly learning. Matt, the one thing that like I laughed at actually when I saw this, and you're a college hockey guy. We talk a lot about college hockey. The tournament's coming up. It's such a great event. You're Big Red. I mean, I don't know how much you follow them, but that the way they won that the way they came back against Quinnipiac, shorthanded, last minute of a game. Like honestly, I flipped to the NCHC game because I was like, oh, Cornell's done. Like this game's over. And then I saw the score and I was like, oh my God, they're in overtime. So good for them. Great for Mike Schaefer. And I just want to kind of hear like about your feelings on the program and how much you're still watching or following. And obviously Schaefer is stepping down this year, a legend in the game of college hockey. And then the last thing I'll throw in there, what threw me off? I'm looking at your rosters from your Cornell time. I had no idea Douglas Murray played at Cornell.
Oh, yeah.
I met him in Vegas partying one night with a group of the guys, and like what a human being that unit is. Oh, like what a beauty, what an unreal guy. Like, oh my God. I'm like, he went to Cornell. I had no idea.
Yeah. And I think he played him in that series against the Pens, right? He was on the Pens that year, no?
Yeah, actually, one of the goals I scored in that series, I tried to pass to Brad Boys and hit Dougie's stick and went in. So thanked him for that one. But no, yeah, it was a great run by Cornell. Kind of destined for Shapes last season, I think. Obviously, they, very impressive ECAC tournament, and being outside the rankings, had to win it to get into the NCAAs. Had a tough matchup with Mich State, but obviously Shape's been there forever and been able to, even with turnover, whatever, just consistently field strong teams, which is not an easy thing for any of the Ivy League schools to do, especially now with the NIL stuff going on. I'm not kind of believing in that for some reason, but it's been Ivy's.
They're gonna have to.
That's what I said. It's the only way to make the.
Can't let that program go by the wayside. It's too important, that program. People don't realize the history of that Lina. I mean, the fan. I mean, it's one of the gems of college hockey.
Yeah, it's just it's impressive to see what they've done, because I mean, from an outsider looking in, how hard it is to have a competitive team year after year in college hockey, and especially when other schools are offering money on top of scholarships for NIL stuff. It's hard to recruit high-end talent, and they've been able to do it through a more team structure type system and get wins. Going back to Dougie Murray, I had some good times with Doug. He was a senior my freshman year, and I remember I was having trouble with my puck protection, so I asked Dougie to work on it with me after practice. I think he put me in the glass about 9 times before I could protect the puck, and I think that was the last time I asked him to work on puck protection with me, because he was clearly more of a man than I was.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I tell people he was the most dominant college hockey player I've witnessed. He was just obviously incredibly strong. People used to call him fat because he has a bigger head, but it's just because he's a descendant of the Vikings. He's the Viking. But he was like 6'3", 6'4", 240, and he was like 6% body fat. He was absolutely ripped, and he would skate down the ice with one arm and basically just throw people off him as he was entering zones, and then they'd set him up. He had these, I think, Sherwood wood sticks.
Oh yeah,
just
coffee curve.
Oh yeah, he would just take one tease from the top, and he would eat other guys' slap shots in the chest. He did not care. He was an animal, and a heck of a college player, a heck of a NHLer, and he was a good teammate to have, and I was very thankful I didn't have to play against him.
Yeah, another guy from those teams who I want to actually have on our show as a guest. I connected with him like a month ago. Is Ryan Vesey, really cool guy. I want to have him on here. I think he'd be awesome.
All right,
but,
so him a text. We still stay in touch. He was my centerman for 2 years, so he was we became good friends. Still stay in touch to this day, and he's awesome guy. He got some good stories, doing some great things with Matterhorn down in Florida. And him and Kenny Tarano. So he'd be a good one. He's got some good stories.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll have to get him on here.
Before Johnny asks you his last couple of questions here, tell you what, Michigan State's in for a tough game because, look, they're a better team, Michigan State. Like there's no doubt about it. But when you get into that format and you've never seen a Cornell and nobody in the Big Ten plays like Cornell plays, they're going to have a harder time finding, space on the ice against Cornell than any other team. And look, again, I said this on the selection show. If that upset happens, I will be the least bit surprised. When I said better team, maybe they have more top end talent is really what I mean. I mean, Trey Augustine, Isaac Howard, like they don't have that at Cornell, but like you said, nobody defends the middle harder. Nobody plays the neutral zone tougher. Nobody finishes more hits. Like Michigan State, that is a rough matchup to see the Big Red in the opening game of the tournament. I hope people are going to dial into that game because that is going to be a dogfight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's like some similarities between like a Cornell team like this and like an Islander team. They're kind of built for playoff type hockey. Obviously strong defensively, great structure, and they try to just pound you all over the ice. So they're kind of built for situations like this, and you get a one game series against any team. Goalie stands up big, and you get a bounce here or there, and all of a sudden it's considered an upset. So anything can happen. That's what makes that tournament so exciting.
Yeah, I think that's listen, the NCAA tournament is going to be unbelievable. Our listeners are pumped. We have like 159 people that signed up for a bracket.
165. We're up to 165.
And I don't know if any of them picked Cornell over Michigan State. So
we'll send you the link if you want to play. It's free. Yeah. It's like a bracket pick 'em. Johnny will send it to
me. I'll play. I'll take that one.
Awesome.
I'll send it to you. I just have a couple more things I wanted to get to before we let you go here, Matt. Just obviously we're kind of running close to time on today's show, but one thing I really got to ask, and like it's so funny because I remember it like being like a big story when you just like finished your career in Hershey. Like everyone was talking about like, oh my God, Matt Molson's like still kicking it, playing in Hershey, the captain, sick. One of my good friends plays for them now, and he always tells me that we talk about the NHL development and everything, AHL, the difference between the two, and some organizations just play their top draft picks and don't necessarily care about winning down there. They're just trying to develop their young guys to send them up and hope that they have success when they get called up. But from what I've heard, everything down in Hershey, and you played for Spencer Carberry, who's now becoming one of the best coaches in the NHL, they care about winning, and they put guys in the positions to win, not just to develop their best players so that when they're called up, they're put in a spot where they can succeed at the NHL level. And I'm curious just to hear what it was like for you, playing down there for Spencer Carberry and what that organization does so well to have their young guys get called up and now succeed, like we've seen with Michael and Protas and these young guys at the NHL level.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely talked to them before I signed there. Obviously, wanted to go there to try to win a championship, and unforeseen circumstances, I didn't play one playoff game. But yeah, I think first year was probably one of the best teams I ever played on. COVID. Second year was the COVID year. We had no playoffs. Won the first place in the league, and then third year I had back surgery. But Spencer Carberry, I would say, without a doubt, is the best coach I've ever had in my life. No disrespect to anyone else I've had, but he was unbelievable. Just I thought how he held people accountable. He was honest, and I think that's how they treat their young guys. They obviously, Hershey wants to win. They want to win championships. That's what they're concentrated on. And to me, I think that's the best way to develop these young guys is through this winning culture. Obviously giving them chances when they deserve it, but I don't think they just give you chances for the sake of giving you chances over and over again, which is the way it should be. They have to earn it, and he and obviously now they do a great job of that, of making these guys understand that this is something Dean Lombardi, I felt, with the Kings did an incredible job with, as well as they want to show these kids how to earn the winning culture and making them learn how to win. It allows them to develop playing those meaningful games where they count and things matter, and kind of excels your path. And you just look at all the guys that in recent years have gone up there playing with the Capitals with big roles, and obviously McMichael's I had a chance to play with him, just an awesome kid, and he's having a tremendous year this year. So I think they do just a great job of kind of balancing that winning culture. And obviously the coaches development team for the Caps are always down there, always working on development, consistently. I think they seem to bring in some great veteran leadership every year. It seems to always be the right guys with great attitudes that want to be there. I think that's a big thing. So they've kind of figured it out and show you that you can have an NHL team and an AHL team doing well and succeeding without just throwing games away.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to hear him talk like that, and he's a guy who's been in Buffalo's AHL system, like their NHL, so the difference he says between like Buffalo and this is why Buffalo hasn't done well. Not gonna shit on them, but it's just crazy to hear the difference between like the AHL teams and what they do down there that actually just translates to the NHL team, because I don't know if people actually think that way.
Yeah, but Hershey, but the only thing I'll say is Hershey's found a way to do it right. I don't know if you could say the Chicago Wolves, theirs has been a little bit of a different story. Because they don't necessarily even have the prospects that the older guys are like teaching how to be a part of the winning culture. The Chicago Wolves have kind of gone out and just like bought a complete veteran team. And I don't know if any of you have seen a game in Hershey. I'm from I wouldn't say down the road is probably an exaggeration. I'm from Villanova, like outside of the Philadelphia area, Matt. And, so like as a kid, like even one year I played for the Hershey Quebec team. And so I know those guys down there a little bit and played them in the American League and stuff like that. It's a great atmosphere too. I mean, the years with Chris Bourque and all those guys, like those guys were legends in Hershey, and the teddy bear toss and the way they sell out, like they're a team that earns a lot of money with revenue. So they need to put guys like that in there. So it's also great to hear you talk about Spencer Carberry like that.
He's awesome. No, Hershey was one of my favorite places. It was just great people with the organization, great people in the city surrounding. Just an awesome. I had just an incredible experience playing there, and
Chocolate Town.
Wish the body could have held up for. They got rid of me and then won 2 championships, so that was a little tough. But it was. I was so thankful to play 3 years there.
I got one more question, and Tommy T knows it because he just wrote in our chat. One more question. I always have to ask one last last question. And this is honestly like it's not even a question. It's kind of like a hypothetical because I actually want to use this to make fun of one of my good friends from high school.
Okay.
You know what a jersey is, right?
Jersey.
Like the shirt jersey, like the
Oh,
Islander
yeah, yeah.
logo, Molson
I've
26 in
never
the
heard it
back.
called, but I thought it was just a T-shirt jersey. But all right.
Well, same shit. Yeah, you
I've
just
heard of
combine
a
the shit.
jersey shirt. Yeah, I thought it was
I
called
call 'em a
jersey
jersey.
shirt.
Just like you call like a button-down jacket, like a shacket, like a shirt jacket. You guys don't know that stuff?
Never heard that either. No.
All right. Well, I taught you a few things today. But Matt, what would you do if you pulled up to, let's say a Bethpage golf course one morning and you saw a 23-year-old looking man, boy, whatever you want to call that age, wearing a Matt Molson jersey and gym shorts? Would you go up to him and approach him and say something? Or would you think, oh my God, this guy's a weirdo. Why would he be wearing that at the golf course?
100%. I go, hey, nice. Now I know the name. Nice jersey.
Yeah. Well, okay. So backstory behind that. One of my really good friends, Adam Hornick, his dad's actually the statistician for the Islanders, Eric Hornick. He showed up
I
to
know
golf.
Eric.
He showed up to golf one morning wearing a Matt Molson jersey, and we were like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, we're at a nice golf course. You can't wear a shirt from 2009." And then,
you're gonna date me that much? Holy could just said nice shirt.
But I wanted to tell you this on the show. I didn't want to text it to you, but you are our like just ongoing joke forever with my high school friend Adam. So I just wanted.
That's really nice, Johnny. Tell him he's an ongoing joke.
Well,
I'm
nice,
a butt
man.
of a joke for the rest of my life.
yeah, you're the butt of a joke.
Like I'm sure he's gonna want to come back if the Islanders make the playoffs now, and you text him. Way to go, Johnny.
Yeah,
My mom actually texted me.
I can't wait to design that tramp stamp for you.
Yeah, my mom texted me. I am majorly manifesting that the Islanders do not make the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I'll look, Matt. If and when they make the playoffs, you're welcome to be there for the live stream.
My face is so red right now.
You're welcome to be there for the live stream. So, all right, man. Listen, we're great. We're grateful for your time today. It was much appreciated getting your take on all these different topics. We're grateful. So we'll check in with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It was fun.
Thanks, Matt. We appreciate it. Have a good day. Awesome stuff. I have to give my buddy Hornick shit for that. Like literally, it's like whenever we go to like a nice place, it's always like, Hornick, you know where the jersey?
I hope your mom knows that you volunteered this, and I hope she doesn't think that I pressured you into this.
No, she does. She knows.
Okay. I just want that on the record to be made.
What an awesome guy,
right.
though. That was great having Matt on.
Yeah.
Last order of business before we close out the show for the week. It's gonna feel like a long. Monday is gonna feel like it's a long ways away when we get back on here Monday.
Wait, hold on. Let me say one thing. I got the best message from David Roth last night. David Roth is a guy who has listened to our show from the beginning. He's not in the chat or live all the time. I can't even read it, honestly. It's one of the best messages. The passion and the anger, and the name calling. Towards all you, me, and Frank. You know, he's a goalie guy. He always sticks up for the goalies. And then he ends it with that he's like, I love you guys. You're the best. And I literally like the passion and the anger, it's the best. Like, but then the love at the end, like, cause he's not, it's not hateful. He's just yelling at me in a
in disagreement.
Yeah. And I just wrote him back and I said, you're the best. I appreciate it. But it was one of the best ranting messages I've ever got on Twitter. So shout out to our long.
I think you should read it.
No, I'm not going to read it. Shout out. Listen, It's a private message. That would be fair, I wouldn't do that. So, but shout out to him. We miss having you live in the chat, but shout out to our guy David Roth, who's been, like I said, pretty sure he's been with us since one of the first or second shows. The other thing I'll say here, Johnny, before you do 365, in the show description on YouTube is all the information to sign up for our NCAA bracket challenge. We're up to like 165 or more people. Get in there, right? Let's get it to 200 people. Winner gets $100, free $100 from me. Okay, unless Johnny wins, then we'll put the $100 towards his tramp stamp. So with that, Johnny, go to Bet365, make sure you like the show, and then we'll say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah. Colby will give everyone the programming updates after I do Bet365. But sticking with Matt Molson and the Islanders theme, they're going to be involved in our Bet365 bet of the night, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner, every face-off, hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between is amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app and use the code NATION, NATION, to get in on the game. You must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, visit connexontario.ca. And our bet of the night, because I am the jinx, we're going to go Islanders money line, -125 at home against the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks are coming off a big overtime win against the New Jersey Devils on the road. The Islanders have lost 2 games in a row, both in overtime and a shootout, looking to get back in the win column. They probably deserved a better outcome the other night against Columbus, and they're going to be looking for that tonight. So this one is I don't even know if I'd advise people to bet with their minds, with their hearts on this one. This was actually Vic's idea to jinx the Islanders, so that's what we're going with tonight. But
why would
big
you
game.
do that? Listen, I think it's going to be the reverse jinx, because we all know what you're trying to do. So I feel really confident that the Islanders will win this hockey game now. Honestly, more confident than I did in the beginning. So, that's good stuff by you. One other quick note: Jacob Chychrun will be on the sheet at 3:20 today. So the new $72 million man in Washington. And I saw people freaking out about the money. Everybody needs to recalibrate their brain and realize $9 million in next year and the year after is $7.5 and $7 million, the previous 2 years. And that's exactly what Chychrun is. He's a $7.5 million player in the National Hockey League. So $9 million on his extension is the right number. So don't compare him to Adam Fox. Adam Fox signed for $9.5 million a couple of years ago. Okay. Look at the cap percentage, recalibrate your brain. Don't get angry. Chychrun is not going to be overpaid. Adam Fox is not overpaid. You got to look at when these guys sign their contracts before you have your meltdowns. So short week this week. I'm on the road tomorrow doing the NCAA tournament here the next couple of days. Don't forget to sign up. Don't forget to give this episode a like. It's going to be a little bit of a long layoff here. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So lots of things will be ruminating for Monday's show. So obviously you won't want to miss that one. But other than that, good job with the guests this week. I know Matt Molson was a tag team effort between you and Vic. And so I think that's a fair statement.
No, Vic was afraid to text him, so he just sent me the number.
Yeah, well, he already went 0 for 1, so he didn't want to go 0 for 2, and then Dad didn't have to come in and trump all you guys. So good job this week, Johnny. Let's go Islanders for now and the rest of the season. I hope Ariel gets to the show at some point today with all the Islander love. I didn't see her in the chat. Johnny, you might have to let her know on social media. Today there was so much Islanders talk today.
We still have so much more we can get to with Matt Molson too. He'll definitely have to come back on here.
Yeah. He probably won't now that you told him that he's an embarrassment or he's a joke.
No, I never. That's not how. Life. Get out of here.
So that's exactly what you said. I know you didn't mean it, but that's exactly what you said.
Really?
I don't even have to put words in your mouth on this one. You actually said that to him.
Is that how it came out?
Yeah, that's exactly how it came out. So other than that, guys, watch the NCAA tournament this weekend. I'm sure if you do, you could send me angry tweets. We love you all. We enjoy your long break away from us here for the next 4 days. And we will see everybody as we always do, 9 a.m. Monday morning. Enjoy, everybody.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.